Yo, 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 what's going on, everybody? What's good? Thursday, week 7, got the Steelers and the Browns tonight, or Steelers and the Bengals, I should say. Why does that matter? Well, Pittsburgh, 5.5 point favorites, should get to 5-1 on the season, and to we can decide to what degree it matters. That's something we can debate. What is unquestionable at this point is you see Aaron Rodgers have success within a different organization. That absolutely matters to the Jet fan and should to the Jet organization because this is a quarterback you decided you were better off without. Ty Butler in the house on this Thursday, October 16th. A little breezy outside. Just dropped my kids off at school. So I was like, man, this doesn't even feel like fall weather. It feels like we're already in the winter. Nice that we finally have some sunshine, but this has been like an accelerated season getting to winter. And of course, winter means the Jets are no longer relevant except for draft conversations. So yeah, I came on here today to discuss, if you're a Jet fan, and hit me up in the chat, hit us up. Also, follow the social media pages, Ty D Butler. That's where you can find me on X, on Instagram, TikTok. We out here, baby. YouTube page, hit that subscribe button. Yo, I was talking to a Jet fan this morning, and he said, just lose every game. At this point, just lose every game, get the top pick. And this is someone who, I'm close to. And I said to him, I'm like, bro, you don't get tired of doing that every single year? And it feels premature. Like they've only played 6 games. For you to already be to the point of misery where it's just like, yo, lose every game. I just can't do it, man. I just can't do it. I cannot detach myself that quickly from rooting for my team to win games. Especially because Don LaGreca on ESPN New York, one of my favorite lines of his is, when you talk about tanking, he's like, yo, these things don't happen in a vacuum. And what he means by that is losing is indicative of a larger problem. So even if you are like, hey, 0-17, number 1 overall pick, sign me up. The retort to that is the Jets had an over-under of 5.5 wins before the season. They right now have one of the easiest schedules remaining in the NFL. If they get to 0-17, that means that this regime that had an entire offseason to put together a team, again, that Vegas thought was quote-unquote good enough to hover around the 5 or 6 win mark, that at this point, as we enter week 7, has, I want to say it's like the second or third easiest schedule. If this regime is overseeing an operation that is that bad, it's indicative of a larger problem. So now let's fast forward to next April. Do you trust that they are going to be able to evaluate the talent in this upcoming draft and get their not just their franchise quarterback, but get a team around said franchise quarterback that's good enough to elevate him, that's good enough to unlock the fullest potential of not just the quarterback, but of all 53? Do you trust that the general manager and the head coach, who, again, overseeing a program that goes 0-17, do you trust them going forward? That's why it's hard for me to sit here and be like, yeah, sign me up. Obviously, like, would I want the number 1 overall pick? Absolutely. You're a Chiefs fan, you'd want the number one overall pick. Obviously, not the worst record, but anyone takes the number one overall pick. But what comes with that territory is some tough questions being asked. And I think that there are actually a lot of Jet fans out there who are so out on Aaron Glenn. They're just like, look, if it leads us getting closer to him getting fired, becoming one and done, I'm all for it. And the reason why I'm laughing right now is because there's like a Yankee parallel here. And the Yankees are a completely different story, right? The Yankees actually make the playoffs, which is something the Jets haven't done in 15 years. But the Yankee parallel that I find so fascinating is there were, and I know this is true because I've spoken to some of them. There were fans that, if you gave them the option, would rather have missed the playoffs because they're looking for something loud enough that gets the attention of the owner. Like, there has to be a level of embarrassment that we can accomplish that sounds alarms in ownership, and it's like, fam, we got to do something about this regime. Like Cashman and Boone missing the playoffs with what, the third highest payroll in baseball, coming off of a World Series appearance, is so thunderous. It bellows to such a degree, it has to grab the attention of ownership. A second cousin of that, because it's to a lesser extent, Jet fans are like, yo, 0-17 is such a level of embarrassment that even the Jets, who have just been bumbling and fumbling, literally and figuratively, even the Jets getting to 0-17 is not something the most cynical person could have predicted. Even the Jets at 0-17 have become such a level of dysfunction, such a comedic horror show, that it has to enter the mind of Woody Johnson. Yo, am I positive that I made the right decision hiring his head coach? So I think that there are fans out there rooting for that because they want to see a complete teardown. A year after we just got a complete teardown where you got rid of your general manager, your head coach, and your quarterback. They're signing up for another teardown because they've been so turned off by what we've seen from Aaron Glenn. And I keep harping on this. It's not just the losses, y'all. It's the fashion and how it's happened. It's the fact that they have progressively and significantly gotten worse since week 1. And I was dead right on this. And it gets me mad. I should actually be hype when I'm right. But it gets me upset that I was so correct on this because I root for the damn team. And I want to see them excel. I want to see them not be so bad to where 6 weeks into the season we're questioning, oh, could the head coach be one and done? I nailed this take, and people were coming at me when I said the Jet fans out there celebrating, because this is what it is at its core. Celebrating a week 1 loss should be ashamed of themselves. The Jet fans parading around, moral victory, Fields looked awesome, the offense, all of that, which culminated in a loss. If you are celebrating that, you're an embarrassment. I said that minutes after week 1 ended. And I was hanging around watching the game with some Jet fans who were optimistic. And I said, y'all, they just lost the game. They lost. Were there encouraging signs? Sure. But damn it, there have been encouraging signs the last 15 years. And this team, over and over again, has found themselves on the outside of the playoffs looking in. Now, the expectation wasn't to get to the postseason. I understand all that. I started this stream by talking about over-under is 5.5. But I can't continue to watch losing and get excited, especially with the context. If Justin Fields, here's where my perspective would have been different. If Justin Fields were a rookie quarterback and I watched that performance week 1, then absolutely I'm encouraged. I'm still gut-wrenched that they lost and who they lost to, but I'd be encouraged simply because, might have a little quarterback here. All right, let's get it popping. But because I had been exposed to Justin Fields, not just Justin Fields, the runner, but Justin Fields, the thrower, because I had seen that time and time again. And this is why even the smartest people sometimes, and I say this respectfully, can be so dumb. I am talking to football fans, hardcore Jet fans. I'm not talking to neophyte. I'm not talking to my kids who don't know any better. I'm not talking to my wife who couldn't care less about football. My wife who would rather stare at the wall and watch paint dry than watch a full NFL game. I'm talking to football fans who are smart, who are educated. And the fact that there was such an aggressive failure in allowing the context to be a part of your analysis is what pissed me off. We've seen this movie with Justin Fields. There are times where, yes, he wows you. He's a hell of an athlete. He'll have games where the offense is just cooking. And again, the athleticism jumps off the screen. But we've been burned by that before, as Bears fans, as Steelers fans, that the follow-up never actually matches what we saw the previous week, which is why I cautioned you guys over and over again. If this is the foreshadowing of things to come, it would be something we've never seen in his career, which is why I've got some reservations. I'm not going to go here celebrate. But the Justin Fields experiment has obviously been a disaster. But it's not just Justin Fields. It is a team that, if we simply remember last year, how much we crucified Jeff Holbrook. There were many times after games where our biggest takeaway was that is the worst coached team in all of football. Plenty of times last year we said that. We watched a Jet game. We watched silly mistakes. We watched questionable clock management, just in-game decision-making, where it came across that the guy making those decisions was just completely overwhelmed. You understood it. I mean, it's a terrible environment to be in, where your owner comes in and he's just like, firing people. It was a disaster class, but also hashtag same old Jets. We watched that last year, saw what the product looked like, and said, that's the worst coach team in football by far. We get to the offseason and we say, man, if they go from being the worst coach team in the NFL to just an improvement, like average, that's exciting. Because a lot of those games last year that were lost, maybe they get one. Or Forget the win loss record. How about the let's try to find like the lowest possible, I guess, line of where we can have an expectation. How about we just be proud of the product that we're watching, which is what Aaron Glenn preached, coming here and, you know, becoming the head coach. Let me ask you a question. Tell me the moment post week one that you have pulled to your television, spent 3 hours watching this team, and have come away from it thinking, boy, I am proud to have watched. I am proud to have spent the last 3 hours watching that team. It's happened 0 times. And the worst part for me, is because it's weird. Us sports fans are kind of like loonies in this way. For some of us, not everyone thinks like this. But I was so embarrassed watching the Jets, and it's because it's a standalone game. That's the worst part. It's a standalone game. Everyone's watching. There's no like, all right, they're part of. It's a full 1 o'clock window where you're not really watching the Jets because there's no significant storyline there unless you're a Jet fan. Not everyone's watching this in embarrassment, unfold where the quarterback stinks, the head coach stinks. It was so bad. I honestly felt like the next time I stepped outside, I had to walk around with a paper bag over my head. And yet you see me here wearing a damn jet sweater, little pullover, zip up with the logo on it. But that's how embarrassing it was. And I've had to sit here all week and listen to folks reverse engineer the conversation. Actually, the fans are to blame. Wow. The fans are to blame. Well, how do we get there? I know it wasn't until week 6 that they forced a turnover. I know they are still winless, the only winless team in the NFL. I know that they are still one of the highest penalized teams, so there's a lack of discipline. I know that we saw on full display the coach literally like lose his mind when it came to game management and clock management at the end of both halves last week. But somehow, some way, it's the fans' fault. So I said, because one of the things that attracts me to a sports take is the uniqueness of that take. I don't care how hot the take is. You could miss me with that. That's not intellectually stimulating me. I like a take that's unique, not a dumb unique take, because those are out there. Give me Iguodala. Y'all remember that from a smart guy, by the way. The uniqueness of what is being said, the uniqueness of the opinion draws me in. I'm like, wow, I've never thought of that. So now I'm intrigued. Tell me more. Okay. So it's the Jet fans' fault for having too high expectations. Because had you simply been resigned to the fact that they were going to be bad this year, then you wouldn't be disappointed. 20-second timeout. I want to know the real sports fans out there who are able to emotionally disengage themselves to a point where losing doesn't bother them. Because you cannot simply call yourself a fan of a team and just throw your hands up, man, we lost, I'm good. That's not being a fan, especially when you were told things were supposed to be different. So miss me with the whole it's the Jet fan fault. I'm not trying to hear that. They are an atrocity. It is hard to watch them every single week. And it's one thing when your team is bad, but at least you watch players, you look for signs like, all right, I see things are going. And this is the difference between the Jets and the Giants. At least when the Giants were bad, there was still hope that their season, from a interest standpoint, can be salvaged by having a rookie quarterback come in. So you're like, all right, man, I'm mad. Like, I'm tight. I want the coach fired. And we could get into all that. But at least at some point this year, I'm going to be able to watch my man Jackson Dart ball out. And since Jackson Dart has come on board, 2-1, in the one loss, they were up 14-3. And, him, Scatterable, that duo has been just wildly entertaining. And now that defense is looking really good. I don't think the Giants are going to start, stacking up wins. But to the point that I made earlier, when you have a bad team, at the very least, be interesting and have signs of encouragement. Like, ooh, I like that player. We dealt with a lot in this town with the Knicks, where the Knicks were the toxic combo of bad and uninteresting. It's like, man, the most interesting part of the Knicks is looking ahead to which free agent that they want to sign that they're not going to be able to sign. And now they've obviously turned that around. Back to the Jets. How is it my fault? Oh, your expectations were too high. My expectations were that they could just be a watchable product. If that's too high, then the hell are we talking about here? If my expectation of them being that they're watchable falls under the category of, sorry, bro, too high of an expectation, then what does it say about the organization? I can't expect them to be watchable. I can't expect them to not embarrass themselves. I can't expect them to look functional. I've got to sit there and watch the head coach of this team, who is all bravado, and I've got to sit here and watch him treat end of half clock management like it's a damn Rubik's Cube, and just be passive about it. No reaction. Because it wasn't supposed to be about wins this year. They're in the talent evaluating phase. Well, where's this talent? Because that's another problem. How many years? You just go back to before Rodgers got here. And this is a point I've made ad nauseum, but it feels like it falls on deaf ears sometimes. Yo, if y'all remember, what made the Aaron Rodgers trade so intoxicating? It was, man, top 5 defense, tremendous run game, got some pieces on offense. All we need is a quarterback. All we need is a quarterback. Why? Because the team is really talented. So if that team that was really talented was a quarterback away from, Vegas in 2023 had the Jets with the 6th highest odds to win the Super Bowl. They were a quarterback away from being a Super Bowl contender. That a lot of the framework of that team is still here. That same team, all of a sudden, that was talented just 2 years ago, isn't capable of winning a game, just blowing leads left and right. And I'm not supposed to take any exception to that as a fan. because it's just like, it's just how it goes. Year one for a head coach. And I get so sick and tired because this is where people show that like there is a such thing as groupthink, and social media has exacerbated that, right? Like it has taken it to like just insane levels. Just because you see something, all of a sudden it makes it true. And the more people that repeat it only intensifies how true that something that was said is. And what I'm talking about is the whole, well, you see, Detroit Lions, Dan Campbell, well, 10-1 couple years ago. Y'all remember that. Think about what people were saying about him then versus what they were saying about Aaron Glenn now. And what I would like to remind folks is, first of all, it's a different situation because in this scenario, you're missing the most important piece, and that's the fact that the Lions had their quarterback. They had Jared Goff. That was their quarterback. The Lions were already 10 steps ahead of the Jets. But let's just play this out for a moment because I came across this the other day. Michael Nania, Jets X Factor, he's got his own podcast. The list of NFL coaches to start 0-6 with the new team since 1980. Now, Dan Campbell's name comes up. Few others provide hope for Aaron Glenn. But what we have to remember is that when we're grasping for dear life, grasping at straws, is when you point to examples like Dan Campbell, there's a reason why the only example you really have that comes to mind is Dan Campbell, is because what it reminds you is that's an aberration. It's not the norm. If we're all huddled up, spitballing names, finding an apples to apples comparison of, teams, regimes that started out poorly that then ultimately blossom, and the only name we can come up with is Dan Campbell. What does that tell you? It tells you, man, the sample size ain't all that great for coaches who are able to make themselves out of this mess. 13 of 17 of teams with NFL head coaches in their debut to start the season 0-6 since 1980. 13 of those 17 teams never made the playoffs. The exceptions you have, Zach Taylor in 2020. The Bengals and the reason why, because let me just double check. Let me just double check. Yeah, I have that right. If you remember, Zach Taylor's first year included Joe Burrow being lost for the season. His offensive line was so bad. He was lost for the season with the torn ACL. So the guys who started 0-6 team debut that went on to make the playoffs at some point during that tenure, Dan Campbell, Zach Taylor, Kyle Shanahan, Jimmy Johnson. That is the list since 1980. The other guys who never recovered, Frank Reich, Brian Flores, Hugh Jackson, Gus Bradley, Chan Gailey, Steve Spagnuolo, Raheem Morris, Cam Cameron, Marty Mornhinweg, Chris Palmer, Lehman Bennett, Hugh Campbell, Frank Cush. The point is there a chance this Aaron Glenn thing can get rerouted and headed into a direction that is more favorable, more promising? Absolutely. The numbers show us that in the last 45 years, it's improbable. And one of the things that is so jarring to me is you expect a head coach to have some growing pains. You expect there to be some mistakes made, challenges have to be overcome because it's the nature of the beast. Like when you were the defensive coordinator, there were certain things you didn't have to worry about. There were certain items put on your sheet that didn't necessarily pertain to you. It was something you had to be aware of, but it didn't pertain to you as far as you having the final call on that decision. So baked into how we analyzed a first coach in a first year head coach is there will be some natural growing pains. The problem is when you pair the natural growing pains with how in all three phases of the game the Jets look completely overmatched. How they have failed with their project quarterback in Justin Fields. Couple that also with some of the commentary. And all of that adds up to I just don't think this is for him. I don't know that he can handle this. Here's a quote from earlier this week. Aaron Glenn asked about Justin Fields potentially taking more chances in the passing game. Now, Aaron Glenn also was annoyed with the media after last week's embarrassing loss because they had the audacity to, on the heels of one of the worst quarterback games you've ever seen, ask him, did you ever think about bringing in Tyrod Taylor? He was annoyed at that. And now this week, they're asking him about taking more chances in the passing game. You're right. I've said that, and I still believe that. That's for any quarterback, especially when you have man coverage to give a guy a chance. But I do know if something bad happens, you guys are going to try to bleep. You guys are going to be bleeping about that, about him. And he's trying to make it seem as if like the media is the problem. Well, I listen to some of my colleagues try to make it seem like the fans are the problem. So from Aaron Glenn's perspective, some of the issues plaguing this team are media generated. From some of my colleagues in the business, some of the issues plaguing this team are fan generated. How does that work? How does that work? It's my fault for having too high expectations for the Jets. It's my fault. It's sad, man. It's really, really sad. It's really sad. So we fast forward and we get to all right now. They actually have a game to play this week against the Panthers. The Panthers team that I saw beat the Cowboys last week. It's not going to be a gimme. And the Jets, who were home favorites on the look ahead line, are now home dogs. I'm trying to look at the latest. So the latest line is Carolina 1.5, minus 1.5. So once again, we are going to get a closely contested game, which gives us the opportunity to see how Aaron Glenn and this coaching staff is able to maneuver big time decisions, make or break decisions, fourth downs, timeouts, clock management. All of those things are important when evaluating a head coach that goes beyond just the win-loss record. So I agree with that part. But when you see him get so thoroughly outcoached, outclassed, and he is like the team shooting itself in the foot, there is little reason to be optimistic about this ship that they're running. I expect Carolina to win this game. And if that happens, the Jets are now 0-7. And then after Carolina, you've got Cincinnati with Joe Flacco. Then you're at a bye week. You lose to the Bengals. You're now 0-8 with 2 weeks to prepare for a home game against the Cleveland Browns. And if against Dylan Gabriel at home with 2 weeks to prepare, you lose that game and you're 0-9, it's no longer an overreaction to say he could be one and done. Short week against the Patriots in Foxborough. You're not beating the Patriots. That's a really good team. That, what are they, 4-2 now? Very well could be 5-1 if not for 5 turnovers against the Steelers. Then you're week 12 in Baltimore against a team that has Lamar Jackson back. Then you're home for Atlanta. We just saw what Atlanta did to Buffalo this past Monday night. Home for Miami in Jacksonville. Jacksonville's been pretty damn good. This past week notwithstanding. New Orleans. I know New Orleans is a bad team, but they're much better than a 1-5 football team. Then New England again in Buffalo. So you go through the schedule. These next 3 games are the most winnable. You fall flat and you are, waltzing toward 0-17. It's going to be increasingly difficult, y'all, to paint a rosy picture. So all I'm saying, Ty D. Butler, that's where you can find me on X, Instagram. Yo, hit up the YouTube page, man. We getting it popping on YouTube. Subscribe to the channel. I'm uploading my S&Y clips, the segments that I do on Sports Night. By the way, I'll be on Sports Night tomorrow night and Saturday night. So back-to-back nights on television before returning to radio Sunday morning, filling in for my man Jake Asman, holding it down with Mike Tannenbaum. So we'll get into the New York game day on ESPN Radio. But busy weekend ahead. I've got television, S&Y, Friday and Saturday night, radio on Sunday morning, and Tuesday I'll do radio at night on ESPN New York 880. That's in live on the app. And then, if you still have it on the radio, and then I've got TV that night as well. So a busy couple days for your boy here. Pumped to be on. Wish there was more like excitement to talk about as far as the Jets. But the Giants play a big game. Imagine the Giants win on Sunday. Broncos didn't look that impressive. Giants beat the Broncos on Sunday, and they're now 3-4 heading into another Philly game. Yo, Giant fans going to be on tilt. Got the Knicks starting up next Wednesday against the Cavs. So I'm going to be heavy on the basketball. Baseball, you got, I might pop back on later today because you got Brian Cashman and Hal Steinbrenner meeting with the media at noon. So it's all happening here, man. Got the Jets, Giants, that baseball talk. We'll see what's going on with Pete Alonso and the New York Mets. And then, of course, as I just said, the Knicks back in action Wednesday. Should be fun. Hit me up, Ty D. Butler, Instagram, on X, and on YouTube. I'll holler at you guys later. I might pop on to recap the Yankees press conference. Yeah, I'm pretty sure I'm going to do that. So follow me on this page, subscribe to the YouTube channel, and follow me on Twitter. Peace and love. Appreciate you guys. Have a good one.